All right. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're dialing in from and listening to the show. My name is Kai Deering, and you are joining us with On the Fly with Kai, episode number 37. And today is Thursday. I can't believe it, September 9th. The time, 2021, time is just flying by. And every week I bring to you some incredible folks from my network, from my tribe that I love to share good tips, tricks, and hacks for entrepreneurs, because sometimes it can be lonely out there, confusing out there. And this really does help some folks be able to understand and navigate those incredible waters a little bit easier. And so today's no different. Today, I've got a woman who's got an incredible long career of corporate finance and HR and office manager, everything from huge companies, for many of you might in the Silicon Valley area, which is where we're dialing in from, like SGI, from VCs to startups to you name it. And she's taken that culmination of all of that experience and really formulated that into her own business, which is called We Can Handle That. She's doing bookkeeping for small businesses. So please help me welcome to the stage here and the show, Beth Claywell. Thank you so much for coming, my dear.
Thank you for inviting me.
Glad to have you. Hey, we've had, just a lot of fun being able to network, and we're in a business networking group together. And I love talking to people about a couple of things. My favorite topic, and I ask everybody, is, you had this great highfalutin career. People would only dream about Silicon Valley, startups, VCs, totally sexy career. What on earth would make you want to go be an entrepreneur, go out on your own, for crying out loud? What was that for you? And tell folks about what made that decision.
Well, I think the final kick in the butt, shall we say, of that was my mother was having more and more health issues. My teenage son was having health issues. And at the time, I was an office manager for one of these Silicon Valley startups. And when you're the office manager, today they call them ops directors, you're the first one in and the last one out. And I needed to be able to control my life a little bit more. So that was really the thing. I had my business going part-time, working with a few book clients. And I said, I need to try this. I need to try to, we'll find out. Can I make this a go or not? And I have been completely busy for a long time now. So
since 2004, right? 2003, 2004.
Yeah. 2003, 2004 is when I started it part-time. 2008 is when I decided to take it full-time. And I stepped away from corporate America in June. And if any of you recall, the economy kind of tanked in June. I thought, oh no, this isn't going to work. But people didn't want to hire accountants and bookkeepers. They wanted somebody that could do the work, but they didn't need someone full-time. So I had the experience, but I was a good cost for them in that respect.
I love that. And there's so many lessons in there. So one of them is, start something part-time. Don't jeopardize, your whole bankruptcy by, going full-time too soon. If you can start it. I started part-time too. And then I think the second great tip there is there's no good time to start anything, go full-time, no good time to start a family, start a business, start anything, just go for it. And there's going to be a blessing in there somewhere. Like you actually ended up doing well, right? So don't be afraid what the economy is and what the things are. I love that. Thank you. I know for sure, Beth, that you are super, super smart. I mean, like super uber smart. I mean, I'm like, wow, I'm always kind of blown away by that. But when you go in and somebody finally throws up their hands and says, okay, uncle, I need help. And you get in there and you start looking at it, because now you're more of a holistic. I know your focus is bookkeeping, but you're more holistic. You can see the HR piece. You can see the legal piece. You can see all these different pieces. What are some tips that you could give people, the biggest mistakes that you're like, oh man, if you just would have done this different, I could have helped you out a little bit more on the back end? What are maybe 2 or 3 big mistakes entrepreneurs and small business owners make in their business?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes is that when they start out, they say, okay, I need this kind of a resource to make my business really go. It may be the primary. They think that the accounting and the back office stuff is, something I can handle on a part-time basis behind. I don't know the first thing about it, but I can do it. And they get them, like you said, they get themselves into a mess. And then they start looking for someone, and they bring someone such as myself in. And then they're surprised at the hours that it takes and the cost that it takes to get them straightened out and on the straight and narrow. Whereas when they bring me in from the get-go, there isn't that additional cost factor because I'm setting up the books. I'm and I'm teaching them. I love consulting. So, I do it, but I teach them along the way. And so that because I think it's important that all business owners understand their financials, but they don't necessarily have to be doing their financials.
And I think that's really true too. So for like me, I have a kind of a mentor in my company, and he said, "I want you to do your bookkeeping for 1 year." And I'm like, "Oh, have mercy!" It was quite an eye opener. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, "Wow, I spend a lot of money," and I also did my personal stuff, which I've never worked on my personal stuff, and it was really eye opening. So I love that. And then when they start doing their own, I know you're a QuickBooks expert. So, you were talking about some of the mistakes that people make if they decide, oh, I'm just going to get QuickBooks out of the box and do it myself. What's one of the big mistakes on that bookkeeping side that you're seeing there as well?
One of the biggest mistakes that I've consistently have seen is that they go, oh, I took that accounting 101, 10 years ago, and I know you're supposed to make journal entries to put your stuff in. So let me see where that is. And, oh, I'll make an account for this and I'll make an account for that. And they don't organize it so they can't see their financials clearly, as well as the fact when you're doing things journal entry wise versus using the modules that QuickBooks has, you don't get good reports. You can't get good sales reports. You can't get good cost reports because QuickBooks is designed around using the modules to give you good accounts receivable reports, good reports that make you be able to handle your business. And when you're small, cash is king. So you need to know, what are you invoicing? What are you receiving? And then you also need to understand what you've spent.
I think it's important that you start early and get it set up right.
Right.
So maybe it's hire a bookkeeper to kind of get all your accounting QuickBooks set up. And then if you want to hire somebody to do it, great. In-house, or you want to do it in-house, but get it started right. So like you said, you don't have a big mess at the end. Is that pretty true?
Yes, that's very true. In fact, I have a doctor that I'm working with, and he's a very, very smart individual, but he knew he didn't know QuickBooks. So I sat down and I taught him the basics. And now he calls me maybe every 6 months or so. Beth, I now have added this. How do I book it into QuickBooks? What do I do? So I'm available to him for occasional consulting, but he finds it relaxing. And he's doing a really good job, and his CPA is happy with him. So, those are all the, so you can do it both ways, but I'm a resource in that particular situation.
So if you're going to be a DIY out there, business owners, at least get it set up right the first time so you don't have to go back and mess with it later, and find somebody like Beth that can help you out. I know we talked about, there's a lot of mistakes people make, and it's just painful because I see it too in my profession. And we talked about classification potentially of workers. Weigh in a little bit on that, especially with AB5 in California. So if you live in California, it's
hard. Yeah, it's hard. If I like to say, if they walk like a duck, they talk like a duck, they are a duck, i.e. they are an employee. So if you're providing the working tools, whether it be a computer or other things, they have to do it in a specific way. If they're on site at your location, if they have to be there, be responsible, whether it's virtual and on the phone for X amount of hours a day, they are more than likely an employee. If they're not set up in business, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is they'll go, oh, well, they say that they're really an independent contractor. Do they have a business license? Do they have an EIN or a TIN number? Do they have other clients? If you're their only client, I'm sorry, they are an employee, and the state will come down on them. Years ago, I had a corporation where when I walked in, they had multiple 1099s. And I said, you need to convert these people. They are not temporaries. They wouldn't listen to me. And about 1.5 years after I left them, I got a phone call from their then bookkeeper. Beth, we're being audited by the EDD. I said, good luck. I said, yeah, they want to know why these people were employees, because one of their contractors ended up complaining to the EDD because she really was a contractor, but she had to come in once a month for a meeting. And so they were investigating to see if in fact, did they do this, and coming in once a month for a meeting is normal, but she didn't necessarily have other clients either. So that was the gotcha.
That's awesome. Our good friend KK, who's also in our networking group, says, can't wait to hear some of these tips. And she and I are both hiring. She's hiring for, somebody in the office to do sales and whatnot. And, I work from home. So I went legit. I payroll myself. I'm incorporated. My folks that work for me part-time, I'm looking for an admin. If anyone knows when I know KK is looking for somebody, we W-2 them because it's just not worth it. It's
That's
just not worth it to monkey with that, play with that. I totally agree. I know you recommend a payroll company. Do you want to share with everybody who you recommend? Because there's a lot out there. And how do you know
there's
what to
a ton
use?
of them out there. And I highly recommend Gusto. It is really the most cost affordable solution. And I've worked with ADP. I've worked with Paychex. I've worked with several different firms over the years. I've worked with QuickBooks, their assisted payroll. Gusto has it hands down. And one of the biggest, and they're very, very reasonable. You can go from just a core program all the way up to having an HR person at the other end of the line. One of their biggest assets is that all of their onboarding is online. So you never get a copy of their W-4. You do get copies of their information for their I-9. But you don't get their social security number. They put all that information in. So you put in who they are, who they're working for, i.e. whether it's you directly or one of your other people, what their hourly rate or salary is. And then they get an email and they do the rest. And so you don't have to have that locked file cabinet. It's huge for my small entrepreneurs. And it's huge for my startups too, because who has locked file cabinets anymore that can't be busted into if someone really wanted to commit fraud? You don't get their checking account numbers, et cetera. They put all that information in.
And that's so true. So KK is also asking, is that how you spell Gusto?
Yes, that's how you spell Gusto, KK.
Perfect. So what's interesting too is like I use Paychex, and just moving over is certainly like a proctology exam on your, you know what I mean? So I stay on it, but I agree. Like they're like, do you have a secure, they want this and that. And I'm like, do you have a secure way I can send that? They're like, no. So I'm like, can I fax it? 'Cause that's way safer. Oh, by the way, I sell identity theft solutions, not a plug for this, but this is why I'm hypersensitive. So I'm like, I actually ended up mailing it to them. I'm like, I'm not sending this via email, my Yahoo account.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, whatever. So I agree. And people can interact with us, as you can see here. And KK has a quick question for you. I have never offered medical, but now offering a medical allowance. Is this tax deductible to the employee? Good question.
Okay, great question. To be honest with you, that's one of those that I would say you need to talk to your CPA, because when it comes to that level of tax questions, you either talk to your CPA or you talk to your benefits broker. They'll be able to tell you. I believe if you set up a, and this is just off the top of my head, if you set up a POP plan, which is a premium only plan, that a medical allowance would be payable to them on a tax-free basis. But I don't know if that is definitely true. You need to talk to the professionals, whether it be the benefit broker or whether it be your CPA. They'll be able to give you the right advice on that.
Or shameless, call me and I'll get you a legal plan and you can talk to a tax attorney. I don't normally do that, but I just couldn't resist. Sorry. So that's a really good clarification, like saying, hey, you need to talk to, attorney, this CPA, blah, 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 blah. She also says she needs a CPA, but I'm sure you can hook her up with that. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yes, I certainly can.
So that is perfect, KK, because that leads me into my next question is sometimes like when people start a business, they're like, okay, what's the difference between a bookkeeper, an enrolled agent, a CPA, an accountant? What are all these things? And at what point would I need what? It's very confusing, quite honestly. Let me get that off there. Very confusing, quite honestly. Like what exactly do you need? At what point do you need what?
Yeah. Okay. A bookkeeper can do almost everything an accountant does, though they probably don't have the accounting degree. I have a business admin degree. I have OJT, on the job training. I was doing it for 12 years full time, working for 3 different Silicon Valley startups. I went and took a course on being a certified bookkeeper. So I had passed it with flying colors, and you don't pass it unless you have at least two years of proven experience and references from previous managers. So an accountant is typically, I like to think of them almost more as a controller. They're the ones that are going to be able to help you develop your budgets, develop your cash forecasts, et cetera. So for the small entrepreneurs, that's where I put an accountant. They're more the controller, the overseer.
But you wouldn't need that as a solopreneur, right? Like that's overkill.
No, yeah, that's total overkill if you're a sole proprietor. But if you're a startup and you're a year into it, et cetera, and you don't know, you yourself as the CEO, et cetera, don't know how to do forecasting and budgeting, then you definitely need to engage. You'll take what I do and you'll extrapolate that and build your budgets, et cetera. But that's not my area of expertise. I can set it up for you inside of QuickBooks, but that's not what I do. So a CPA is somebody that can help you with all of that, but I think of CPAs more as being the tax CPA. They're certified public accountants. They're not auditing your books. They're taking the information they get from either somebody in-house or someone such as myself, and they're formulating your tax returns and giving you tax advice as to, you really need to do this, or this to maximize your tax savings. And who was the other one that you asked me about?
So, accountant, enrolled agent, CPA versus a bookkeeper.
Yeah. An enrolled agent is an individual kind of similar to, I like to think of them similar to myself in that they're authorized by the government to prepare tax returns. They're not necessarily going to give you that next step advice on business structure that perhaps a full-fledged CPA will do, but they're going to give you really great advice and prepare those tax returns and look at that information that comes from either yourself or a bookkeeper. And, this is what you got to do. And by the way, there are different, everyone thinks, oh, well, I'm an LLC. It's amazing sometimes how many people go, well, I don't know what kind of an LLC I am. And there are 4 different kinds. There's disregarded entity, which is basically just a little bit above a sole proprietor because it's single. There are S corps where the owners of the S corp have to take a salary. They can also take draws, but they have to take a salary. There's the C corps where you absolutely have to take a salary. And there are partnerships where you and the partners basically take draws, and you may or may not put the partners on salary. But S corps and C corps absolutely have to have salaries. Disregarded entities, not so. And people go, well, I don't know. I said, well, we need to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on a salary myself. There you go.
Yeah.
So that's very helpful. And then how do you, what kind of questions do you want to ask to be able to hire a bookkeeper? So like, okay, fine, uncle, I need a bookkeeper. What kind of things should you be asking for? Because obviously integrity is really high. They're in your freaking accounts, right? I mean, that's a big thing.
That's right.
So what outside of that obvious one, what should you be asking? What should you be looking for?
You should be looking for a bookkeeper who has who has kept books in the area that your business is in. So if you're a software business, you want someone who understands about, well, are you subscription based or perpetual? Because there's different kinds of accounting you have to do for that. If you're in contracting, you're going to have tons of inventory. How good are they at keeping track of inventory? Do they know how to do that? Do they understand cost of goods sold? And cost of goods sold for a small business is very different than for a larger growing business. You need to kind of understand, are you going to have lots of inventory? Are you going to have a warehouse? What are you going to have? Are you going to have enough work that it doesn't make sense to have a bookkeeper? You need to hire that first level accountant to sit in your office and be there and hear what's going on, et cetera. Or are you such that, you can pick up the phone or email to your bookkeeper or accountant to get that next level of advice, or to know where to go for that next level of advice. Recently, I had a company that I worked with for a very short period of time, 6 months. They grew like that. I said, you need someone in-house, because you need someone in-house to help kind of corral. And we ended up I ended up helping hire a CPA to replace me. He had his CPA, and he was looking for that first opportunity into a private company, and he's done a fabulous job for them.
So it sounds like the most important questions that you're going to want to ask if you're going to hire a bookkeeper is like, do they have experience in like cost accounting? 'Cause that's a whole nother animal versus,
Total.
service subscription versus inventory. Because you can't be good at all that, right? As a bookkeeper, you can't,
Right.
you got to niche a little in something.
Right. Yeah. And you have to know, based on your own client list as a bookkeeper, if you're setting up your own business, where do I enjoy working? What kind of companies do I really want to work with? Do you want to work with the startups who may or may not want to? Do I really just want to work with the individual entrepreneurs who maybe only need to see me quarterly? And, sometimes they only want to see you annually, or do I need to be in there every month doing stuff for them? And you have to decide. And then there are those that think that you're full-time, and that you work full-time for them, and are constantly on the phone with you or in emails and wanting you to handle this or that. What level or mix do you want of that? So kind of mix up, maybe take one of those and a bunch of smaller ones sometimes is a good mix.
And then I know you talked about how somebody who's coming straight from corporate that has a great idea that goes out, then they're going to hire the corporate attorney that they've heard of at their old company. Speak to that too, because that's you got to be able to know where your budget is, for crying out loud.
Yeah. No, I would never ever recommend a startup to work with one of the larger law firms. There are many smaller firms, and something such as what you have. Legal Shield is absolutely awesome. I mean, I have Legal Shield myself, and someone that you can pick up the phone. You kind of know what your set costs are going to be, because initially what you're going to need and want are going to be questions. What about this or what about that? And you don't want to get nickeled and dimed. And most of the large law firms don't want to waste their time with you if they're not going to have big bills, because they're used to billing $400, $500, $600 an hour. And there are many really good small law firms and law firms that are individual entrepreneurs that like working with the startups, like working with the individuals. And they have an expertise. A lot of, in the larger law firms, you're going to get an associate that may be as green as you are. And that's never a good thing.
No. And then, so you're a solopreneur too. So the nice thing is you understand their plight. Like, I've worked with, some third and fourth tier CPAs, and they just don't understand small business because they've only worked, in a firm and number crunch. So you want any commentary on that as well?
Yeah, I have just started working with a new client, and she happened to say, oh yeah, I spent an hour and a half with this attorney, and I can't believe what he charged me, and I don't really understand the answers. And I said, you need to speak to a CPA that I know specializes in small businesses. We happened to have a conversation yesterday. She says, I can't believe it. I got so much better information, and it didn't cost me, basically anything per se initially. So, big companies versus small companies, they by nature have to act differently. Those associates have to show that they can, book billable hours. And so they're going to bill every 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, they got to justify those salaries, the office buildings and all that stuff too. Yeah. So I couldn't agree with you more. Now, you also are a one-stop shop. You got a lot of great resources for people. So a lot of great referrals and places you can point them in. And I do too, right? So
Yeah.
how did you get to that point? Because I think being an entrepreneur, it is important that you have great trusted partners and connections. But if I'm new, how do I develop those relationships? Where would you recommend somebody go to start getting partnerships,
Well,
collaboration, things like that?
yeah. I would highly, I mean, this is going to be a plug for BNI. I would highly recommend BNI. If you're a small entrepreneur and have never done business networking before, you'll learn a lot. It'll teach you a lot. You'll meet great business professionals who are looking for opportunities to make referrals to you, because when they're out talking to people, they say, do you know anyone that does XYZ? And once you get to know the people in your chapter, etc., you've got a referral source, and it's just great. Especially if you're like myself, I work out of my home, and so I'm not around a lot of people during the day. And without that type of a network, of my old relationships would have dried up and gone away, because I was in corporate America for a long time, and some of the folks that I know and trust, they're not going to work with some of my clients, because they're small. So how do I rebuild that network? And that was one of the avenues that I've used to rebuild my network of connections, was get to know people in a chapter and align yourself. It takes time, effort, and money, but it's worth it because it pays itself back in no time at all.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are in the same BNI, and so is KK. And so if you're interested in visiting ours, it's 9 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays. Reach out to myself or Beth for details on that. But I couldn't agree with you more. I've been self-employed now. I had a health insurance dabble company back in the day too. So I've been self-employed for 22, 23 years. I've never had a job. And that BNI, I've been a member of that off and on that entire time. Because you're going to get such great trusted resources, and you want your clients, this is just my 2 cents, to want to come to you for everything, for referrals, for all that stuff. So they don't shop you, they don't go, you know what I mean? Like, you want to make sure that's another great hack and tip, right?
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. Jeannie has a comment here for us too. I love Jeannie. She says, starting out can be so overwhelming. It's well worth the time and money to get advice right from the start. So that's a great clue for us on our ending note here, because, do what you do best if you're self-employed, and then hire it out. My whole thing is, if it doesn't make your heart sing and it doesn't make you money, for crying out loud, you can't afford not to hire it out. And like, my husband loves to work in the yard, I don't. So I would hire that out, but he loves it. So again, that's the rule of thumb. If it doesn't make you money, it doesn't make your heart sing. Like, maybe, like you said, you had a doctor that loved doing bookkeeping. Cuckoo. You know what I mean? Then fine. But if it doesn't make you money, hire it out. And if they were to want to engage with you, Beth, I know I have the information, but would you share that with everyone? What's the best way if they want to continue this conversation, and have you maybe be the cleaner for them because they didn't start off right? Right, Jeannie?
Yeah. You can reach me at 408-772-1269. That's my office number. Or you can email me at bethwcht@gmail.com.
Perfect.
And we can make arrangements to connect. If you say, hey, I want to talk to you, but I don't have time, or if you catch me on the phone and you end up leaving a voicemail, I will definitely get back to you.
Great. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and that your information was on the screen for those of you who are watching it on replay or watching it on YouTube. But I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And so with that, that was another incredible episode of On the Fly with Kai with Beth Claywell, bookkeeper extraordinaire. And we meet here every Thursday. And my favorite part about coming here Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, all time zones in between, is we can really take a lot of time off your learning curve. If you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, you're currently an entrepreneur, a seasoned professional, this is why we come to you every Thursday with incredible tips, tricks, and hacks for you to be able to take your business to the next level. So again, thank you so much, Beth, for being here. With that, take care, take charge. We'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.